Mr. Madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the masters. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim's forehead via Skype. We're a little low on you there, Tim. This is our live news and current events episode for Wednesday, March the 16th, 2022. We made it through the Ides of March all right without anything happening to any major leaders or anything like that, which there was a lot of talk like that about that from people like Lindsey Graham and stuff over here in the States. And so glad we made it through that without any of that mess. But Tim, how's it going? Thanks for joining us via Skype. Yeah, sorry, I'm terrible to keep talking after I make it sound like I've stopped talking to Tim on the Skype.
I'm good on my end. I'm gonna have to confess that. Oh yeah, I see my forehead.
Yeah,
over
I'm
here
fixing
now.
that right now. I'm gonna have to redo your video. There we go.
Now, or do I need to
No,
do
I've got
something?
it. I just needed to rearrange
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well, I have to be honest, I haven't really watched too much of what's going on in the world. Just trying to stay a little distant for a little peace of mind. I did watch that news article you sent me, so whenever we do that later, I can comment on.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I can comment
I
on that
thought
a
you
little
might
bit.
have some sort of opinion on it. I have a couple of opinions that I may have about it, depending on, what further information develops from it. Um, but yeah, I've got several local stories I want to get into. I saw again, there was there's been several teachers in the area lately who have been charged with doing naughty things, we'll say, well, no, that just sounds too light, but I don't want to say exactly what it is, but charged with like doing stuff they're not supposed to with their students in our area. We've had two men lately, and then down in McMinn County, which is not very far away from us, a few hours. There was a female teacher, 38 years old, back in February. I just kind of came across it today, but she was in the news for doing this, trading like vape pens for having. She was messaging, allegedly messaging her young students, 14 to 17-year-olds, and offering them things like vape pens and adult
Mhm.
items that they would happen to have an adult purchase for them, and in exchange for some sort of sex or sexual favors. So that was one that had not been on my radar, but I just came across it today, as after I was seeing a couple of other stories about a former volunteer high school teacher. This guy right here, accused of attempted sexual contact with a minor, could have the charge dropped. Um, 32 years old, and the judge has offered to drop the charge if he stays out of trouble, pays the court costs, and has no cost for the victim. Now, in this case,
Mm.
he was okay. He was accused of attempting to use Snapchat to communicate with a 17-year-old girl while claiming to be an ETSU student in his 30s. And then the investigation uncovered he was actually a teacher at Volunteer High School where the girl attended. So, wow, he was trying to tell her he was a student, and he taught at her school, so that's kind of crazy. But like, how did she not catch on to that? But how would he think that he could get away with that? I wonder too. But it's just good that these people who try this stuff are usually not very smart on the local levels, and they tend to get caught.
Mhm.
But there was another teacher in our local area that kind of got into the same thing just recently. So I wonder if this is something that's happened, has been happening all along, or if maybe they are pretty skilled at getting away with it, or do you think this is something new?
I don't think it's new at all. I won't give names, but I'm sure everybody can remember back in like elementary school, like maybe you had the one teacher who maybe set the girls who were a little prettier in the front row, and you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like there, everybody had at least one teacher that maybe wasn't contact creepy, but looking back on, you can go,
Oh
yeah, that
yeah,
was kind of
yeah,
creepy on what I'm
yeah. And
saying. And I think I think what kind of, I guess, to be real short about it, I think we've always had a problem with people who have sexually deviant minds uh, doing deviant things, and the teacher role is a good grift to be around children. And in my opinion, and I think the research, if not already there, will prove this. It's primarily, I think, that's where women get involved, because like it's easy. It's like men are dumb about sex. That's why when like sex predators get caught, it's like people walking into like this giant Chris Hansen house, and they just get busted, and it's like, how were you so stupid that you thought this was even real? And yet it still happens today. Every day you can catch like four people getting busted on YouTube going down into a situation they should know better, and now they're famous for being a pedophile. But they've caught a couple of women lately
mm-hmm.
online that you can catch in situations, you know, pedophile catching. But if you look at it, a lot of the women that get busted, they're usually teachers or like almost like I guess more of authority figures is what I'd have to go with. And that makes sense because I think when women go deviant, they're smarter about it, and that's why they don't get caught. And I don't, like I said, I don't want to name names, but this is not the first female teacher to
Oh
be
no,
caught with
no,
students around here.
it usually makes big waves, but this one kind of, I mean, I know it's a few hours away, but it didn't really make its way up here that I saw. I mean, it was on WJHL, but I missed it along the way.
And I'm not saying there's not just as many male teachers that get caught, but it does seem like the female teachers that decide they're going to do this, they get away with it
Oh
a lot
yeah.
longer.
Well, it's been a joke regularly in, sitcoms and stuff where or stand-up comedians would be like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome for these kids," or whatever. Where were these teachers when I was in school and stuff like that. And you can remember thinking that, when you were that age, I'm sure, that, but now, as an adult you can see the whole situation is just really fucked up and not something that ought to be happening. But so that's probably why it is why the women do get away with it a lot longer. Is
Yeah, I mean it's
yeah,
complicated, but I mean that does seem to be the case. Like I said, I'm not going to name names, but that's not the. It's not uncommon. Is one of the issues. It's not uncommon for male teachers to be caught doing something stupid. A guy I used to work with got caught. Wasn't even because I can give you an example of a dude I actually knew in high school who got busted for doing bad things with teenagers at a
mm-hmm,
school. But I also know a guy that I worked with who, when it came out that he got busted for inappropriate things with students, it was actually like he was doing dumb things like making inappropriate jokes. He gave one of them a knife that he shouldn't have given them, and he gave one of them a pill. And when you look at it, even though, yeah, that's all deviant, shitty behavior, it's like, was that dude just wanting to hang out, and that's how pathetic he was?
yeah,
That's not, what I'm saying? It's like they never said anything about him like having like sexual contact with anyone. It was just like he was like still like he was a 14-year-old deviant kid, and he just wanted to go back and substitute teach and hang out with
yeah,
people. It's like, man,
yeah. Well, having worked at grocery stores, yeah, as you have, I know you run across those folks from time to time that are, in their 20s and 30s and want to hang out with the bag boys and, the younger cashiers and joke around with them and, stuff like that. And it's not, like you said, there's sometimes some deviancy involved, but doesn't necessarily always indicate something worse than that. But but like you said, I think it's kind of one of those things I think it's one of those things when we were growing up, like you said about those teachers that we all just kind of, laughed about it at that age because we knew, we all just agreed that they had the hots for these, teenagers or whatever, and it was just as teenage boys, it was just kind of something that we laughed about, but uh, you know,
Yep, Matt, do you remember like being in school and like I know it was one thing to have a couple of teachers that you thought were like whatever the word for hot was back in
yeah,
whenever you were like
yeah,
12, But I mean, like not to be like I guess overly graphic with the mentality of it, but like there was no way in the world at like age 11, even like the way a grown woman smelled wasn't sexual to me. You know what I'm saying? Like to a 12, like to 11-year-old boy, to me, like a perfume of like whatever a woman was wearing at that point in time to attract a man who at that point in time was probably wearing like Old
mm.
Spice. That's not like mothballs. That smells awful to elementary school kids. And so like I really do like I don't know, maybe I have to like justify why people do this sort of thing. Cause I was like, it's like even like being with like because I try to like put myself in that it's like me trying to like be all lovey dovey with like a senior citizen right now. I'm not saying like someone like with like good legs like Tina Turner. I'm saying like go to the old person's home and like snuggle up with like the girl in the wheelchair. I just don't understand what the disconnect there is that a woman wants to impose on a child. It's just strange.
I've always imagined that it maybe had something to do with being rejected or not being, fitting in school and, still, I think that's probably a lot of what it is to most of them, but who knows, I mean, there's probably been lots of studies on it if anybody was interested in trying to find out what the experts think about it. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
Uh,
pick up sexual deviance on the Iron Mountain
Yeah.
Hour. I don't know how we got on
Well,
that.
I hate to kick off with that. I actually had these stories in a different order, but that was the first one I came across, and it was like just so prevalent. And I think that's an important issue. Um, and
It
I'm
is.
glad that
It is.
something's being done about this stuff, and that it's not just being, at least in some cases, that it's not being allowed to continue. So that's one good thing about it. I got
What do you
what's that
What do you think about the idea that it might get out of control, though? Because that's one
with
of the
like
theories I have
Salem witch
about.
trials deal, finger pointing or
Uh, well, no, like I remember, I think it was when we were talking about a big tech episode, and I think we talked about big policing, and I was saying that I think a lot of policing is going to go to like self-policing, whether people like that or not, because right now, where at one point in time it was crazy to watch Chris Hansen catch pedophiles. Now it's like you can go, like I said, you really can watch at least one or two people get caught live every night now if you subscribe to enough channels. And so at what point does it go too far where everybody is doing the scar like like okay, like you remember how we did counter, the left was doing cancel culture, and it went from being a large group of people, and they kind of ate their own group of people down to where a lot of people got alienated
Another break.
for
sorry.
more and more arbitrary reasons. So if we start self-policing pedophilia, that's a good thing because it's like bottom of the barrel and nobody
Oh
wants
yeah.
those guys to get away with things. So we're not going to say anything when people are kind of doing something. I mean, I agree with a lot of what they're doing, but some of it is harassment because there's so much gray area about what you can do. Like as long as you can get them to touch you, you can kick their ass, and the police won't do anything to you because it's self-defense. But what are you going to do when you've got three guys with cell phone cameras like chest bumping in an alleyway, and you're not supposed to freak out? You know what I'm saying? Like it is getting into some weird territory.
Well, I
is
mean,
what I'm saying.
yeah, if it's somebody who's trying to meet up with the kid for nefarious purposes, though, I really
Nope. Like they've also started doing a thing called well, to skip all the way down the line, not to bore you. Self-policing is almost all levels. You got people catching package scammers. Nobody
oh
cares
yeah,
about
that's
those things.
those are hilarious videos, by the way.
Yeah, and if you go to like Kit Boga and a couple other ones like Jim Browning, they go after scammers that are after old people trying to get their pensions, and fuck them
hmm
too, right? Nobody cares that you're wasting scammers in Pakistan's time, and but I'm just wondering, as the left nibbled at their own group of people for different reasons, at what point are we going to allow? It's all the way down to like shopping carts. See, if you go to YouTube and type in cart
hmm
narcs, it's funny, but that guy's he's going to get hurt one of these days because he goes around grocery store parking lots, catches people not putting their cart in the buggy bin, and he just walks up to their car and casually puts a magnet on their car that says, I don't even know what it says, but he just gets in a verbal argument with them about whether or not they should be putting their cart
hmm
up, right? It's all the way down to harassing people, and it's funny. It's funny right now, but we're all the way down to harassing people for not returning the shopping cart to the corral. So I'm just wondering, using escalation theory, how far does this go? That's my question to Cliff.
Have you heard of the shopping cart the shopping cart test? It's something that gets passed around. It was posted on 4chan years and years ago. It's been passed around all different kinds of websites, but it's basically this that uh, the idea is that you can judge someone by whether or not they put their shopping cart back, because it's the one situation where to do the right thing is totally on you. There's no penalty. Nobody's going to say anything to you if you don't do it. Um, but it only helps out people, and only you will really know that you did it. So that's been passed around for a while. So I wonder if he'd seen something like that and decided to start fucking with people. Uh, with that in mind, I don't know, but that kind of makes you the guy who's taking the shopping cart and ramming it into, the side of somebody's truck for not stopping on, in front of you or something. That kind of makes you the dick, in my opinion.
He's real benign about it. He's just real
Yeah, if
comical
it's
about
funny,
it.
I mean,
But
I think that would make good videos. I'm just saying, if you were doing it for that purpose, I think you're the dick at that point.
if you just want to, yeah, if you just want to giggle, you go cart
Yeah,
narc, and he just with a funny voice. He does find some
right.
Karens. But like I'm saying, I watched a video earlier, and people are already discussing exactly what I was about to post. So I didn't post. I was like, oh, people are starting to get, because I've had this thought in my head for a while. Number one, at some point, you keep catching people trying to meet underage kids. A lot of these people are already really pathetic people. And so you've taken someone who's already not winning at life, and now you're like going to embarrass them on camera. And like, you get busted on YouTube trying to meet a 12-year-old boy or something, your life really is over. You know, like, people aren't going to forget that.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be on the registry at some point, because some of those guys get people arrested. Like, the cops are working with them now.
Your life should be pretty much over if you try to do that, because just because you didn't actually do it.
Right, but my point is, how many of these people that you can tell are already losers who have now been embarrassed online, and now there's like a residual set of channels that watch these channels and just make fun of them. So now it's like multi-tier. How long before one of these people has seen the Joker too many times and they decide to pull out a gun at the guy that humiliated them?
Yeah.
And I was glad to see that there was people talking about it finally on some other channels that said, like, how long before these people start fighting back? And it's not from the stance that I think these people should fight back. It's just human nature. If you keep messing with crazy people who have nothing to lose, and you take away the only thing they have, which is like anonymity and like the sex offender world, they're probably somebody's going to get shot. Is my point.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, the guys doing it should definitely be careful about how they approach it. I mean, I like that there's people out there getting these guys out in the open. But yeah, they really should be careful. That's a good point.
I just think it's not that nobody thinks it's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Things are going on live. Like, these are live streams. This isn't pre-recorded. A lot of them are pre-recorded. So at some point in time, we're going to see somebody get shot by an accused pedophile live on YouTube. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something to be wary of for those guys out here. They like I said, a lot of them. I can see what you mean about like not that they don't deserve the harassment but at the same time, you can see how that could push somebody who was in an unstable point to.
That's my point. It's human nature to expect that you got to take away they're a piece of shit factor. You just have to look at, if you keep cornering enough people with cameras with life ruining material, at some point you're going to get a hold of the right crackerjack that's going to explode. Somebody's going to get hurt. And I guess to cap off what my real actual point of that question is if it's all the way down to like carts, like cart narcs, you know what I mean? Down to there, I guess escalation, like, what else are we going to deem as unacceptable to where we can just put somebody on camera? Because right now we all agree that we should be busting pedophiles and scammers. But if we're going to keep allowing people to quite literally harass people, are we going to start taking it down? You know what I mean? Are we going to start taking it down to things that maybe you shouldn't be doing that for? If it's more opinion, you know?
Right, like, you're parked too close to the curb. What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, I was thinking, like, do you remember, like people have really been getting on each other's nerves? I'll use one from the right just so I can speak to it, since we followed it. Like, there were a lot of people who think that the truckers took it too far in Ottawa. You know, they got post-honking syndrome and all that stuff. We take that serious. Like, what if they really are traumatized by it?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I guarantee you that sucks to have those trucks honking outside of your house the whole time. I guarantee it.
Like, we keep if the right is pushing the left and the left is pushing the right in all these ways. Right now, we all agree that these pedophiles should be busted. You can find people supporting it, like, where they don't think these people should, and they're like live in the catches. Usually when they're busted in like a Target in a lot of places, the people are like, you should leave them alone. You know, people defend it some places. It's weird.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of videos where that happens.
Yes, I'm just wondering, I can't really even give you an example because I feel like I'd be taking too much of a side. But like, as absurd as our reality is getting, at what point are people going to start making these harassment videos about things that aren't necessarily across the board considered bad? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just don't have an answer for you. It's an interesting question, and there's the only way to see is find out what happens. I do have another local story here I wanted to hit with you real quick. I'm going to play this video from WJHL.
Breaking story at 5 o'clock. A juvenile's facing attempted murder charges after an officer-involved shooting. This happened late last night.
Kingsport police say officers responded to the 700 block of Northeastman Road about 10 o'clock last night after a call that a juvenile escaped Department of Children's Services custody. An officer was reportedly searching that area around the CSX train tracks close to the 1900 block of Lincoln
I was just going to tell you.
When the officer says the juvenile suspect was spotted. The officer was shot in the leg after an altercation with that juvenile. Just moments ago, the Sullivan County District Attorney's Office announced they are charging the teen with evading arrest and attempted first-degree murder.
News Channel 11's Bianca Murray is in our Kingsport newsroom with more on what led to the shooting not far from her location tonight. Bianca?
Well, Josh and Sarah, one good thing that was confirmed by the Kingsport Police Chief today is that officer is recuperating at home. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation today also reported that the 16-year-old male was also taken to the hospital for treatment of non-life-threatening injuries sustained during the incident last night.
The Kingsport police officer responded to the call of a white 16-year-old male who escaped the custody of the Department of Children's Services in the 700 block of North Eastman Road. The officer made contact with the teen near the 1900 block of Lincoln Street and attempted to take him into custody. TBI reports the juvenile resisted arrest and tried to gain control of the officer's service weapon. We're told at some point during that struggle, the weapon discharged, striking the officer in the leg. The juvenile was also injured, but details of his injury have not been released. He was taken into custody by other officers who arrived on the scene. TBI special agents say they are working to find out what happened leading up to the shooting by collecting evidence and conducting interviews. Today, Kingsport Police Chief Dale Phipps says being notified that one of his officers has been shot in the line of duty is one of his worst nightmares. He wrote in a statement that the injured officer is, quote, in good spirits, especially considering the critical nature of what he just went through. The statement continues, our prayers are with him and his family as he continues to heal, and we anticipate his return to duty.
Phipps said in his statement about the juvenile suspect that he is extremely pleased that the juvenile is in custody and wrote, quote, we look forward to him being charged to the maximum extent of the law. Now again, as Sarah said, the suspect has been charged with evading arrest and attempted first-degree murder via a juvenile petition. Live in Kingsport, Bianca Murray, News Channel 11.
You want to go first, Tim, or you want me to?
Well, you go ahead and go for it. I do have questions, but you go ahead and
I have a lot of questions because there were, you know, with it being a juvenile, there was not a lot, you know, probably that they're allowed to tell us. But the first thing I wonder is, one of the first things they talked about, that he was in DCS custody. Was he removed from, you know, from an unfit home, or does that mean he was in, you know, like juvenile jail, or something like that, or juvenile court? So that's the one thing I want to know. The another one is the TBI is going to be, you know, collecting evidence and conducting interviews, yet he's already being charged with first-degree attempted murder. I think that's interesting too. I wonder, you know, what they had. You know, they may have evidence that leads to that.
Well,
and then
I think
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just had.
Well, I think he was with the TBI officer. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a severity. I'm not saying I agree with the severity of the charge first-degree murder, but it's a federal agent, and I know that has to.
Well, no. TBI is investigating it. It was a Kingsport police officer.
Yeah.
But
my bad.
But the TBI does, you know, that's the state agency. They do, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. They do investigate. You know, I'm pretty sure any officer involved shooting.
Yeah, for some reason I'm thinking the TBI got shot, but
no.
I watched it right before we did this. So I should have known.
Well, the third,
anyway, go ahead.
You know, the third thing I wanted to know, would like to know, is how exactly did he obtain the officer's weapon? So, you know, was this a kid who had escaped from custody because he'd been removed from his parents' home and wanted to go back home, or you know, run away to grandma's house, or was this, you know, a kid who's involved in some bad stuff and has done some violent acts before? And why was the officer
when I found out that I had cancer?
Whoops, where's that coming from?
Scared me.
Where is this?
The job I had before
why
Amazon,
did he actually pull
that
the
job
out?
Had no benefits. And at Amazon, they start that day that you sign on the dotted line. Because of those benefits, I'm here today. They were there for me like.
I don't know why that started playing. automatically pauses every tab that I open. If I switch to another tab, it won't let me play anything in the background. I have to keep that tab open, but suddenly it'll just randomly play an ad while I've got a bunch of other stuff open. But yeah, anyway, you wonder what led to him drawing his actual service weapon and not a pepper spray or a taser or not being able to apprehend the child with his hands. There's some big tough 16-year-olds, so I could see maybe having to use some of that non-lethal stuff to subdue them. But maybe he got into a struggle with him, and the kid actually pulled the gun out on him. But aren't there devices that secure aren't the officers' holsters made where it's actually very hard for someone who doesn't know the holster to get the weapon out of it? Seems like I've heard that.
Well, just a theory. And this is I guess just going with patterns. I mean, what kind of situation would you have to be in where you would go for a cop's gun? Like, I'm just saying, like, you're going for a cop's gun. Number one, he probably went from behind. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a Kingsport cop. It's not like they're dealing with dangerous gang units every single day. They probably weren't expecting a juvenile to pull the gun out of his holster.
Yeah, that's what meant to be my third question, and I didn't actually ask that. Was did the officer pull the gun out and the kid take it from him, or did?
Does it not make sense that the kid was just like, "Fuck it, I'm not going"?
Or did the kid grab it and that's that? But it seems like they would say that too, though.
It's just a guess. Yeah. Obviously we weren't there, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I could see both scenarios but you don't really know until that's the issue that I have, is that none of that information was given. So I think we need to watch this story, and hopefully we'll get some more details. What stood out to you as far as what questions you had?
Really would just be the origin story.
Okay.
I just don't think kid, old person, middle age, doesn't matter what age you are, you have to be motivated to take a gun and try to kill a police officer. I mean, it could be extreme mental illness, PTSD from a really shitty childhood. I mean, he's in police. He was already in the system. So, I can only imagine that kids that have been in the system that long have had a pretty rough existence. So,
well, I just have in my mind the video we watched last week of the trooper. When I asked you how you'd like to be pulled over by that guy, how would you like to be a 16-year-old? I'm not saying this is what happened, but 16-year-old on the run who's been taken out of your parents' home, and then, that guy, that trooper or somebody like him comes after you. I've just again, we need more.
Just to balance that out, let's say even it wasn't that trooper. Let's say that kid had an entire childhood of that trooper over and over and over again until they've just been completely smashed. And then one day he comes across Barney Fife from Kingsport, and he realizes, holy shit, this guy's like wet baloney. I can just take that gun right out of his holster. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that was just his first. I don't know the officer. I definitely don't want to.
No, we don't have enough information. We're totally speculating here.
Got a juvenile who's in the system reaching for a Kingsport officer's gun, and somebody got shot, and now the TBI's involved. So, something squirrely. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm just saying, kids don't go and steal officers' guns for no reason. He obviously had a really bad situation he was in. Even if there was no crazy police malevolence or not, the system is definitely probably not a fun place for people to be in.
No. Well, let's move on to a little more regional news. Today we got Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. He proposed a 3-month suspension of the sales tax. Now, Youngkin, he's the recently elected and recently inaugurated governor of Virginia. He's a Republican. He replaced Governor Ralph Northam, who was a Democrat. And after the state of Virginia, the Senate, the State House kind of went really red after, they'd had a lot of blue go there. Virginia had about gone blue, all the way. It was kind of a purple state for a long time. And then Democrats kind of got in there pretty big. And then I think it was 2020 actually, where the Republicans won a lot of back of that. And Governor Youngkin won the election here this year. Well, he's proposed suspending the state gas tax, I guess, for 3 months while we're going through the high gas prices. He said it cost $437 million, then, they say that it costs the government. A lot of times they say these things, but to me, like, no, it's not costing us. We're the ones that pay for these things. It's not taking our money from us. It's not that it costs the government that. Go ahead.
Where does the gas tax go? I guess if they could specify where that money
goes.
Oh,
they do. I mean, they have that listed somewhere. I don't have that, but.
I mean, don't think they should be the ones to propose that information. Mm-hmm. Here's what we're going to, if we suspend the gas tax, here are the services you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And just be honest with the people, but they don't do that.
I'm sure they'll do that. In Tennessee, the lawmakers that proposed it said they would use it from the state's budget surplus, and it would cost $200 million. In Virginia, they're saying $437 million in unanticipated transportation revenues to support the pause. So that's what they're doing. They're saying they're not going to, as they say, they have unanticipated transportation revenues. That's pretty interesting. So they have a spare $437 million laying around that they just didn't expect to get in the transportation revenues, and we'll just cover that little gas pause there for you. So that's a pretty interesting way to phrase that right there. So there'll be no services missing because of unanticipated transportation revenues. Well, at least better late than never for returning our money there, or Virginia's money. Now, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, WBIR Channel 10 out of Knoxville today, has reported that he has no definitive plans, or I think they reported this 2 days ago, that he has no definitive plans to put a 90-day moratorium on the collection of gas and diesel taxes, as a couple of Democrat lawmakers proposed that he do in which we talked about last Wednesday. So I think it was that day that they had proposed that. And I said, well, let's go for it anytime and make it permanent while we're at it. Anytime we can cut a tax out, that's good with me. They said that Tennessee that could pay for it out of the budget surplus, so there'd be no need to cancel any services or anything like that for them. But anyway, Bill Lee decided he didn't want to do it. It was John Ray Clemens and Bo Mitchell from Nashville called on him to enter it. The gas tax brings in roughly $9 million into the state every year, and I don't understand this. Tell me about this. Tell me what sense this makes to you. Mitchell says, okay, this gas tax brings in roughly $9 million into the state each year. Mitchell says the moratorium would put about $224 million back into the pockets of taxpayers recovering from the pandemic. What sense does that make? If the state only collects $9 million in gas taxes, how is that going to, cutting that out for 3 months going to give us $224 million back? Do you follow that in any way? Or am I the only one that just doesn't make any sense to me? It seems like it should be an equal amount, or less, because I don't know, you're only cutting it down for a quarter of the year. But anyway, they say they collected over $1.8 billion in sales tax since August this fiscal year. We're sitting on a rainy day fund of $1.5 billion. So anyway, that would be nice for the Governor Lee to cut that out, I think.
This is not what it looks like.
Now that's something worth chasing.
Well, I was going to show you some of this stuff, but I'm getting tired of that. Anyway, so that's the idea was to lower the gas costs during the Ukraine and Russia conflict. And there was a pretty interesting story came out of Yahoo News today. And that was that secret CIA training program in Ukraine helped Kyiv prepare for Russian invasion. And basically it goes through that CIA were in there from like 2004 training these guys, basically big stay behind networks so that they would be able to match Russia. And it seems like they were kind of set these guys up in there in Ukraine and then started poking the bear. Trying to it seems like they wanted Putin to do this to me, or maybe the CIA did.
You seen the guy, the mercenary, on Instagram?
Yeah, I have. I meant to pull that up. I'll pull him up right quick. I saw him. I came across it on Twitter.
I don't know the the legitimacy of what he's claiming,
Yeah.
but I thought that was an interesting take.
I did. Let's see. Let me see who had this. Jake Morphonius of Blackstone Intelligence. I can't believe he's actually on Twitter. That he hasn't got kicked off there. He got removed from YouTube about 2-3 years ago. Let's see. Morphonius. He's got a string of all these, and I think it's pretty interesting. Okay, guys, let's think about this for a minute. We saw, as Tim and I discussed, that the news pivoted really quickly from COVID to war, right? Tim and I kind of told you this looks like this is what's going to happen. Now COVID may come back, and that may come back to the news because that was certainly a cash cow for the news, but we saw they were going to something else. Now, a lot of you guys out there who support Trump and who are maybe don't support anybody or don't believe that either side is right, you've spent the last 5 years or better saying y'all are fake news. CNN, Fox, okay, and here we've had over this whole Ukraine conflict for the last about 3 weeks now, or going on 3 weeks. Almost every story we've seen coming out of there has not been true. We've found out a week later. I mean, whether it says one thing or another, it's just been over and over again. Almost everything I've seen about there has turned out to be misrepresented or false at a later time, or at least all the big stories that people are pointing to, like the Snake Island thing. They said that the Russians came in and that the Ukrainians there said "fuck you," to them, we're not surrendering, and that the Russians blew them up. Well, they actually captured them; they were alive. So that was the first thing. Then there was the whole Ghost of Kyiv, that there was this, Ukrainian fighter pilot who was flying around in an old MiG shooting down, the Russian jets, and this is not Top Gun. That's not really how things work anymore. But still, it got passed around everywhere. And even then you had news and political personalities and pundits saying, well, it doesn't even matter if this is true or not. It's important to build the morale up. So
what's Sam Hyde?
Well, there was actually Adam Kinzinger, Republican representative, shared the photo of Sam Hyde's face photoshopped onto a fighter jet pilot, and it said, "This is the Ghost of Kyiv has been identified. It's Samuel Hyde." Yeah, spelled the Ukrainian spelling of Samuel. And so one of our congressional representatives, I can't remember if he's on the Intelligence Committee or I think he is, or maybe the Homeland Security Committee. I think that's it. The Homeland Security Committee falls for a meme and is using it basically to propagandize or to try to spread this idea. And we've had a lot of our representatives saying things that are pretty troubling to me. But what Tim was talking about with the mercenary video, I'm going to show you real quick. There was a fella. Now this guy, Jake here, who, man, he posts a lot of stuff, but Jake here, who posted the thread that I found. Now I can't find it. I'm going to have to go to media on his line. He has a whole string of these where he actually did identify this mercenary guy, and this guy is kind of he's a Boogaloo boy, and have shown some signs of being, not that I'm saying if you're a Boogaloo boy you're unstable, but he's been involved with them, and then he showed some signs of instability, we'll say. Now if I can just find this. There it is. I'm gonna play it for you real quick.
All right.
But this has been disputed. Some people are saying it's real. Some people are saying it's not. It's like, but there are other stories that are saying similar things to this from American and British mercenaries and that are showing up. But here's this one real quick.
So for any people who are wondering what is going on, all right. We were part of the Georgia National Legion, the 102nd Ukrainian Territorial Defense. Okay? Our base got fucked up. The base right next to us got fucked up. Americans, British, tons of British dead. Alright? They're not saying nothing. They're counting our dead as their dead. They're trying to send us to Kiev with no fucking weapons, no kit, no fucking plates. The people who are lucky enough to get weapons are only getting magazines with like 10 fucking rounds, okay? When they wanted to send us to Kiev, we said no. Our whole group, a bunch of Americans, Canadians, British. So they told us we had to get the fuck out or they were going to shoot us in the back, alright? So me, this British guy, and another American, we fucking hid in the back of an ambulance to get out. We got to the border, and it was a whole nother mess. When you get to the border, anyone who has kit, anyone who has any military shit, they're fucking pulling you out of the line and they're sending you back to the front. We got dropped off about 5 clicks from the fucking, from the border, and we walked. And we get to the border, and this humanitarian group with a bunch of ex-SF veterans from England pull us to the side and say, you need to get, like, pulled us out and fucking, like, hit us. And they were like, you need to dump all your kit. And they're pulling people out, cutting up passports, sending them back. So we dumped our shit. We got, like, in all of our fucking, we got in, like, Red Cross vests, and they had, like, fucking humanitarian passes to get us through the Ukrainian border. People need to stop coming here. It's a trap, and they're not letting you fucking leave. The best way to leave is like in a Vic or a car or something. People who get on by vehicle have a better chance of hiding their fucking kit in the back, doing whatever the fuck they can, but do not try to leave Ukraine on foot if you're a volunteer.
But yeah, that's there's a lot of stuff like that, and Jake Morphonius on Twitter, and I'm not sure where else he is, but here he's got an article from the New York Times here that he's found that goes with that talking about how they came from around the world to fight for Ukraine and their training camp was bombed. And this guy here, he's saying the same thing. I'm not going to play that one just because we played one, but he's pretty much describing the same incident. There's a lot of reports of things. The reason I'm showing this is because we keep hearing out of these news that, for one thing, we're hearing we had this build up to say, Putin is another Hitler, and there's this CIA story shows right here that basically that the Western intelligence agencies were setting up in Ukraine, and basically there was fighting going on in the Donbass region that seceded or declared independence, and there was a whole other thing going on with the president who was in Ukraine at the time. They elected like a pro-Russian president, right? And then they had an election, and they elected him. Well, then there was a color revolution that we pretty much know 100% was put up by the CIA, and then they put in more of a pro-Western president then, and that was about the time back in 2014. I'm not sure exactly when the time frames line up, but I heard someone ask on Tim Pool's show, what is Ukraine? Why is this so important? And and they were talking about to the Bidens and to America, and they were like, oh, well, there's this, the pipeline that goes through there, and you do have a Russian natural gas pipeline for the biggest natural gas company I think it's in the world. But then you had, Hunter Biden was on the board of this Burisma company, which is I'm pretty sure that's a natural gas company as well. And
energy.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, energy in general. But
I need to know about energy with all that crack it's pumping through these veins.
Well, you got him getting $83,000 a month to sit on the board of Burisma, which, probably most of he didn't have any experience in anything like that. But the thing was, you probably also know about Joe going over, and there was a prosecutor investigating his son, Hunter, and his activities, or investigating his company, Burisma. And Joe went over and got that prosecutor fired, he bribed the government with $1 billion loan guarantee. He said he was going to pull it if they didn't fire it. And he said, you know, the famous clip, well, son of a bitch, you got fired, and then replaced him with somebody who was more favorable to us. So to me, I think, and there's also evidence of the Pelosi's and I forget who all. Maybe it was several political figures on both sides of the aisle who had big money tied up in Ukraine. And to me, it just kind of seems like a place where they can give money to Ukraine, and that money goes over to people that control the government there who are favorable to them, who then basically give that money out to corporations that they own over there or control over there. And it's a way to give themselves kickbacks. And you know, they jumped on Donald Trump and impeached him really quick when he started looking into this stuff, saying, "Oh, you can't investigate somebody, 14 months ahead of an investigation." And it was right after this that Joe Biden actually declared for his presidential bid. Was right after the actual phone call, not after the phone call was made public, mind you, but after the phone call itself. That was when Biden declared, and the whole thing was, "Oh, you can't investigate your political opponent." So it seems to me like a lot of people have a lot of money tied up there, and they don't want much light shined on it. And I think, with Russia moving in the way they are, I think they're afraid that light is going to be shown on it. But there's a lot of evidence that, it does not look like Russia is losing this war like the press is telling you. If you're they're saying that I keep seeing stories that Russia is, having devastating losses, and that they're, Vladimir Putin's in over his head. That may be true. They do have a lot of good weapons there in Ukraine, but here are the things that sound key to me. One, that the things from the Foreign Legion guys that they're getting, just I read several things, and people could be LARPing, but I don't feel like that. Maybe some of them are, but there's a lot of this stuff out here. So I think these people are, for the most part, actually over there and legit, and they're all echoing similar things, that they're just there are no supplies and nothing for them, and that they're being sent up to the front lines, when hardly given a weapon. And you've got the stories in the news the past few weeks from the Ukrainian government handing out weapons to their citizens and offering to release criminals with military service history and from jail. That doesn't sound like, and Zelensky today in front of the Congress basically begging for help. That doesn't sound like that Ukraine is winning that war. Even though the news is saying that. But
I think it might be just that they don't need to win, they just can't lose. Because I don't know if that the fellow on Instagram is real, but what he's saying, it sounds like they're just not even sending Ukrainians into the battle. It sounds like they're letting Russia just chew up mercenaries while they sit back and, because he said people are dying and they're counting them as Ukraine soldiers that are dying. It's like, if you're going to count that, it looks.
I'm pretty sure that Ukrainians and Russians are both dying in pretty large amounts, and I would imagine probably higher than they say.
The mercenaries claiming that the mercenaries that died were being counted among, that's what he was saying. I'm saying, what are the odds that, like, the government, like, that the oligarch in Ukraine, if Russia comes and takes over and they put up a new flag, the oligarchs aren't going down. Like, they're going to still let all those rich people own everything with their new flag and new rules and stuff. So what are the odds that the people in Ukraine are just kind of milking a war that they're not really going to suffer?
I don't know though, man. I mean, I think they've definitely been putting up some pretty heavy resistance. You had, it looks like the Russians marched in a lot of their old gear. They've not really been, these guys got hypersonic missiles and lots of new tech that they're not deploying any of that. They're marching in, 1960s and 70s trucks and,
wasting.
Yeah, it's probably cheaper for them to deploy that equipment than it is to maintain it, or for it to be destroyed even than to maintain it. So it seems like they're doing that. They said they're using all conscripts, that are marching in. They're not really using any of their good army, but they.
it really just is a hard fight, and they're just taking it easy. Like, it would be like if the United States decided it was going to take
Well,
Florida.
I'll tell you what I think, and I could be totally wrong here. This is just me speculating. It seems like maybe, you know, maybe you're sending in conscripts and trainees and maybe not even telling them on, because you don't really, if you want to take over, it seems like it may be like almost like a art of war technique. Because if you want to take over the area, you don't really want to kill people. A lot of the people in that area are ethnic Russians, and I don't think really that Vladimir Putin has, even despite what the media may say, I don't think he really has an interest in just going through and killing a bunch of people. I could be wrong about that, but that's not going to make you popular with the people that you're left to rule over. And Russia has a long history of assassinating their leaders when they don't like what they're doing. So, up to, through the 20th century. But you don't want to be in that position as being seen as, killing your fellow citizens, for one. For two, if you're going to control the area, you don't necessarily want to damage the infrastructure too much. So you're probably not going to use your high-tech weaponry as much as possible, or anything really destructive. But three, these conscripts and young soldiers are they're holding ground is all they're really doing. They're going in and they're going like universities, radio and television stations, communication centers, government buildings, and you've seen that this is reported that a lot of these scenes that you see, and you saw the famous one of the hospital, that was reportedly taken over by the Azov Brigade and of the Ukrainian soldiers, the famous, the Nazi brigade that's been in the news for being Nazis over there. And they actually moved out a lot of the people and took it over. And then that was when Russia hit that place. And you saw the news said, 17 people were injured when they basically bombed this hospital into the ground. Like, well, that's, 17 people were all that was injured. Doesn't sound like they really bombed it into the ground, for one. But two, it seems like even if they dropped a bomb on it, if there was anybody in there, it would hurt a lot more people than that. But they did say a lady died today. I think today or yesterday that came out that a lady did die. But the people who were actually posting on Twitter, the Ukrainian brigade who actually took it over, and bragging about it reportedly. And then there was reports today of a attack that was imminent from the Russians on a theater in Ukraine. But there were all kinds of reports coming out before that they had actually forced these people out of the theater and were going to blow it up to try to convince the Americans to get into it. Now, of course, we can't verify all this. This is, like I said, all these stories that have come out of this have turned out to be fake. But what I want to ask is, okay, this is obviously a very complex situation. And if recently Oliver Stone's films were removed from YouTube, Ukraine on Fire and something, I think, Inside Ukraine or something like that. 2 documentaries he made in 2014 and I believe 2016 that go back into the history of this. Now, they've been uploaded onto Rumble, so you can go check those out for free if you want to get on Rumble. But it gives you it's a very complex history. It's not something I can explain to you in a few minutes, other than, kind of the overview I gave you, that there was a Cola Revolution and a pro-Western president was installed. And there was a whole situation with people claiming that they were basically being slaughtered in the eastern part of Russia, and that they were appealing to Russia to protect them from this. So, I can't vet any of that really, other than, I read lots of information. Some of it is true, some of it isn't. But what I want to get to mostly is it's a very complex situation, and we've got, Harshbarger and Griffith today, our local representatives, Diana Harshbarger and Morgan Griffith from Upper East Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. They're calling for continued aid to Ukraine after Zelensky's speech. And, I'm all for giving helping the refugees out and stuff like that. But what I'm not for is continuing to send weapons to these people, because I'm afraid what happens when you keep okay, they're not going to be able to take out the Russian military. I just don't believe they're going to be able to. if Vladimir Putin is intent on continuing his objective, right, and they have this more resistance, he's going to be forced to save face, even to step up his destructive capability, and I don't think that's good. I think we need to be, instead of calling for, sending weapons to them, I think we need to be finding a way to get this thing to the table diplomatically, and I don't support, adding. I am glad that they both said they didn't support a no-fly zone, which a lot of people are calling for, not really thinking about the fact that if we have a no-fly zone that we enforce, that means we're going to ask Americans or NATO to shoot down Russian planes. Which is an act of war. So a no-fly zone, in effect, declaring that is an act of war. So that's something that we don't want to do. We want to slow this thing down and not make it go any further. But what I'm getting at is, it seems like a lot of people in our local area and people that I meet, who are maybe more conservative or liberal, but particularly conservatives is who I'm thinking of, because we spent the last 5 years or better saying fake news, and we saw so many examples of how the news twists the truth and lies and propagandizes you and tries to get you to believe certain things about certain people or certain situations that we later find out aren't true. And we get like the whole Trump thing. You're saying fake news, and I'm with you. There's a whole lot of fake news about Trump. And then the COVID thing, there's a whole lot of fake news about that. But now you think they're suddenly telling you the truth. And I hear folks who are conservatives are saying, well, I just think Putin's another Hitler and we'd all just get over there and take him out. Hey, before you start thinking like that, let's try to look at some more information and not just watch the 6 o'clock or 6:30 news and base all our thinking off of that. Is all I'm saying. Because we know these guys lie. We know they have agendas that are not the same things that you and I are interested in. So let's keep that in mind when this situation goes on, and let's realize that they've been lying about it too. So, let's step back and keep a cool head and try to figure out what's going on and what we can do to actually improve the situation, not just rush to believe what we're told and rush to action, whatever that action may be that may escalate the situation. But
I think people need to consider the history of Ukraine. Just a theory, since we can all we can do is theory, since we don't live. We didn't see people getting shot with a juvenile in Kingsport, so we don't know what's going to happen there. And we're not in Ukraine right now, but I think one of the things we need to know is the history of Ukraine, and I guess I don't want to go on a giant history lesson because I'm going to get a lot of stuff wrong, but like Ukraine was used as a weapons manufacturing hub for illegal arms trades after the Cold War was over. And I guess we'd have to do some internet detective work here. I know there was a lot of weapons stored in Ukraine, and they were, and after
they stored a lot of nuclear weapons there.
All those went missing, and they have there was no way of really tracing how all those weapons got sold. But if the factory for all those weapons is still in Ukraine, all they got to do is fire them back up if they're still there. I know that's a fat chance. That's from the 80s. I said, what are the odds that you said that they're just sending in these little, like the beginner troops or whatever you want to call it? And it seems like they're not really using their laser-guided missiles or their plutonium bombs or anything crazy. They're just sending in people with guns. What are the odds that Russia wants sort of a not really a Cold War, but they want like a mildly heated war? Because war is very profitable.
I mean, that could be the case. The war is profitable for somebody, always.
It's profitable for America. Nancy Pelosi and a lot of people they've really accused most politicians of having a lot of like stocks and like DARPA and Lockheed Martin and weapons manufacturing. And I mean, it's one thing to have money in like Ruger or Smith and Wesson, but when you have money in DARPA, that's only used for war. So I mean, like, it's really sketchy if a politician is allowed to have. Isn't that a conflict of interest when you have money invested in war products? And also determine if the country gets to go to war or not. Not even your own. So now you're in charge of a country. You get to make decisions. and two countries that you're not even connected to decide to go to war, and you kind of have a say in whether or not they kind of
you literally
go there.
do have a say in it.
It has to be going on. So I'm just saying, that's my point. War is very profitable, and if you could get enough oligarchs on all sides of the fence to say, hey, if we let the peasants kind of shoot each other for a little bit, we could probably make a lot of money.
I don't even think it's said. It's probably just, something that everybody knows is, and if there's an excuse to do it, it's probably done. And, that's not something that can be fixed easily. But what we can do is recognize that there are folks that have those sort of ideas, and that maybe they're not always forthright with their intentions, and perhaps we should not scream rah 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 to whatever we watch a 5 to 10 minute clip on the news about, because that's, realistically, you get, if you see it on the evening news, you see a 5-10, and I don't remember the last time I saw a 10-minute story on the evening news at 6:30. So people like to give people shit for watching stuff like Joe Rogan, or even Jimmy Dore, or other. Jimmy Dore's not long form, but like long form podcasts. Even like Russell Brand or Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, things like this. People like to give people shit for watching this, but they actually delve into topics for 3-4 hours, and ask a lot of insightful questions. And a lot of times you only hear sound bites from one portion of the conversation to make the whole thing crazy. But the people who listen into that are hearing a lot of informed perspective, and they're hearing it in depth for hours at a time, versus the people who say that they are crazy, who are watching the evening news, and they're seeing 5-minute stories that they're watching for, maybe if you're watching it from 6 to 6:30, to 7, you're watching the local news for 30 minutes, and only about 10 minutes of that is news. Then they get into weather and sports. And then you've got the evening news at 6:30, and realistically, you got commercials in there too. So how much news are you actually getting? Probably about 44 minutes in your hour, you're actually getting news. And each of those stories are very short, and there's not a whole lot of detail in most of them. And not only that, they're often done in a way to evoke emotion rather than laying out facts. So I think I'm about done, except I wanted to say that something to consider. A lot of people think back to the days of, if you'll hear people say, like, especially folks who are retirement age, or say back when I was a kid, Walter Cronkite was, he was the truth. He just gave it to you. And I kind of tend to think, well, Walter Cronkite was the same as these guys. He was just better at it, and you were less suspicious of it. And that's the reason they put him up there, is because you trusted him and he could tell you anything. Just like Dan Rather and Brian Williams used to be two of the most trusted men in news in our generation. They were both caught, making up phony stories about getting shot down in a helicopter. And, I can't even remember what Dan Rather's was. It was something about George Bush that he just made up and ran with. So, but yeah, those, we've got example after example after example of, like, so many you can't even count it, of how the news lies, all the way back to the different wars that we've been in before. We discussed on this program yellow journalism, and you even learn it as a child in 4th, 5th grade. My children learned about yellow journalism in the Spanish-American War, and how the news riled the American public up into supporting a war that didn't actually benefit them. It was, it benefited the sugar traders who were making a lot of money in Cuba and didn't want that to come to an end. So they, used their papers and that they owned, and they paid off other papers, and they had stories written to support a U.S. attack on the Spanish ships there in Cuba. So, they did, and then later it turned out that the Spanish didn't actually attack us, and that we had aggressed on them. And then, Joseph Pulitzer was one of these yellow journalists, and we name our best prize in journalism after him. So let's consider all these things before we just believe what we read or see and run off to support some cause or another. But Tim, I think I got to work in the morning. It's getting kind of late, and I'd like to play a little DayZ before I go to bed. What do you think? You got any final thoughts for us?
I'll leave you with one short final thought, and you can go play the game. I'll do something similar. Actually, I got to restring my guitar. Just as the people who watch CNN and Fox and the MSNBC, just as Gain and Tide and Coca-Cola and whatchamacallit candy bars are trying to get your money, once you get the product, it doesn't mean it's good because they spend a lot of money on advertising to get their money on said news channel. Tucker Carlson does not make whatchamacallit candy bars taste good. And therefore, I must tell you, I'm very disappointed in Tennessee and Virginia and every liquor store that I've gone into over the last probably the last year, going on 4 years, I say. And finding empty shelves where there's no Buffalo Trace liquor because you guys are just gobbling it up like it's just maple syrup. It sucks. It's not good liquor, guys. I'm so disappointed. We come from an area that gave birth to moonshine and liquor like Jack Daniels and Maker's Mark, and just good liquor comes from our area. And people are drinking freaking Buffalo Trace liquor, which is only popular because they really did a good job marketing it through JRE and Justin Wren and a couple other people. Stop buying Buffalo Trace. It's not good, guys. That's my complaint. It's not good, and people keep buying it.
Well, I've never tried it, but
well, I guess we should get some if the fucking shelf would quit being empty, and I guess we can try it on the Iron Mountain Hour.
I have heard Joe Rogan mention it several times, so it's definitely good marketing there. If that's what we got going on, he's like, oh yeah, it's just good, man. I just like to pick some up.
That's just what it is. He gets paid to say that, and then they paid Justin Wren, the guy saving the pygmies, to come on there and talk about it too. So that it's like they hit Joe Rogan with advertisement. They also paid people that they knew were going to be on his show so it was like they flooded the JRE experience. And once you're advertised like that, like it's just people just start assuming, oh, that must be good. I'm not saying I'm not knocking their grift for doing a very, very good scam. I mean, or I guess a good marketing technique. Everybody needs to keep in mind his first sponsor was the Fleshlight.
No,
I don't know if anybody that's not on every shelf I've ever seen, so that marketing didn't go that well.
But everybody knows what a Fleshlight is.
That's figured everybody knows.
There was a thing about the well, no, I won't even get into that. It was a whole trick that people played on the ATF. But anyway.
Save that for next time because now I'm interested. I just want to say, if anybody's dying because they think Buffalo Trace is great, send us a bottle. We'll try it live on the Iron Mountain Hour, and I'll eat crow if it's any good.
Yeah. So with what Tim said too, even if you are not watching mainstream media, if you're just watching one particular thing, it's always good to step outside of your bubble, whatever that may be, and try to look at it from all perspectives, because some people, even if they're not lying to you, some of the good guys that are good, they get stuff wrong because they're so used to things being so shitty that they expect it, and sometimes they blow things out of proportion that aren't necessarily what they make them out to be. So whatever side you're on, just try to not rush to judgment and not rush to action whenever you see these things. And like Tim said, send us some Buffalo Trace. Hey, I didn't ask you on this video, but if you're still with us, like and subscribe and share the channel. Let's get in here and mix it up in the conversation in the comments. We'll see you guys Sunday. We're not quite sure what our episode's going to be just yet, but it's going to be fun. Oh, hey, and Free Range Farm tomorrow, if you're in Elizabethton, Friday at 6:30 p.m. They're teaching you how to raise chickens. Chickens 101 at Free Range Farm on Elk Avenue in Elizabethton. So that'd be pretty interesting for some people who are trying that kind of stuff. But Tim, I'm going to hop off here, and we'll see you folks later, and have a good night.